The Late Night Legends podcast is meant for an adult audience only. It may contain sexually oriented content. Content may not be suitable for sensitive listeners. Please be aware of your surroundings. Listener discretion is advised. Watch out.
Guys and gals and anybody else that is here tonight. I am your host, Kay. I'm also here with another host, Joan, and another Jesse, and another Frank, and a very special guest. This is Larry Eissler, who has agreed graciously to come on our show tonight. We're so excited. But before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and do announcements. I do not have a load of laundry running right now. I can't speak for Frank.
I do not. Tonight's a night I do not.
So we're good? Anybody else?
With load of laundry, I did one this morning. Thank you for asking.
Good. Got it out of the way.
My announcement is I'll be on Dave Scott's Spaced Out Radio this Friday at 11 p.m. Central Time because he's in the mountains of British Columbia, so he's 2 hours behind me. So 11 p.m. Central Time, I'll be on Dave Scott's Spaced Out Radio. I'm very excited.
Catch Jesse there, catch these hands, and then also catch me outside. How about that? Joan, do you have any announcements?
No.
Oh. All right, well.
I'm sorry.
I think HR might be mad.
HR is
No,
probably
HR's not mad. HR's frazzled. June is a very busy month. Not for HR, just for me personally.
Couple more announcements. We're going to be doing a very cool and awesome nautical themed month coming this summer. I don't know exactly when it's going to start. I think it's set to start mid-July to run through to mid-August. Does that sound correct to you, Joan, or are we just doing it from the start of July?
I have the list here, so I can tell you.
Goody.
Well, you start July off, so you're really the one making that decision for everybody.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'm thinking we should do second week of July so that we don't run it up against the Independence Day. What do you think?
Okay, Kay, that's you, so you do that. You decide for us what we're saying.
The 15th, we do have the guest, though, as well.
We do have a guest coming the 15th, yes.
Okay.
Allie, and then James, and then we have Jesse doing the Queen Mary, and then we're in August.
So look forward to
Jesse and Frank are off, and I think James is off.
Yes.
Jesse, James, Frank are off in August, and then you've got Joan, Kimberly, maybe Shayna, and Charlie that's gonna step in.
I might rope my husband into doing an episode.
That would be fantastical. Does he have his own desk and camera and stuff too, or would you guys just buddy up?
He's using my vanity right now, so you could just watch the back of my head apparently, or he could sit next to me.
Well, he already knows how to use your mic. Hi-oh. Sorry about that.
He does, but the beginning of August is a Japanese holiday called Oban, so we were going to talk about that and talk about why Japan celebrates ghosties in the summer and not in the fall.
Awesome. Alrighty. Let's hand it over to Jesse so we can get talking to Larry. Jesse.
Yeah, no pressure.
Right, yeah. Not awkward. Well,
Not at all.
I just saw him on Saturday. We did the paranormal convention in Countryside, so everybody was busy. Didn't get much time to chit chat. Met Larry February. It was what was it? Allie's event in Wisconsin in Madison.
Oh,
so
yeah.
And pretty much been following you ever since. I think even a little bit before that, because Dave Schrader's thing that we went to, and you were at Chris Fleming's thing last year, but I didn't really know you.
I get around. I get around.
Right.
I'm like a bad case of the flu.
So, I do have a couple questions. One is, how did you start with like getting into the paranormal? Did you have like an experience, or know someone that had an experience?
So I had an experience, and it has nothing to do with why I got into the paranormal, but it was an early experience. When I was in, I think, middle school, my parents had made this massive bunk bed. I'm 6'2", and I could stand under it for the desk. So, the bed was like 7 feet up. And in high school, I remember sleeping in the bed, and this was back when we all had those box 19-inch TVs. Remember those?
Yeah. Projection TVs, yeah.
I shoved one into the corner of the room on a shelf across from this bed so I could, lay in bed and still watch my Cartoon Network, my Adult Swim in high school. And you know how, like, a program or commercial would end, it'd go to black, and then it would, like, blind you with the flash at the start of the next one? In that flash, I saw a little kid with a red coat and dark hair peeking over the railing of the bed mattress. And, I'm 6'2", the mattress is, maybe 8 inches, and then the railing was a couple inches above that. So this railing was more than 7 feet off the ground, and here's this little kid just going like this across from my face.
Oh my God.
And then as soon as I sit up, he's gone. But it was just in the moment of that TV going to black and then flashing again is where I saw him. And I saw him numerous times. But, I didn't get into the paranormal at all until much, much later. So,
wow.
2009, I deploy. I go to Afghanistan. And I come home and, I'd watched Ghost Hunters before. I was a fan of the show. It was very entertaining to watch. But I always felt like some of the things on there were set up. Not fake, just set up a little bit. So I thought, well, I could do video editing, not like I can now, but back then I could, photo editing. So I started to disprove the paranormal. I ended up joining the Bachelor's Grove forums, and whenever people would post a photo, I'd be like, hey, this is this phone app, and this is the source image that the phone app uses. You're faking that. And finally, someone got so pissed off that they're like, you're just crapping on all of our stuff. You give us a half-assed explanation. You need to come out and do an actual ghost hunt. I'm like, all right, fine. Go right ahead.
Wow, they challenged you to ghost hunt?
Straight up. Like, I'd never been before, and they're just like, you're coming with us. I'm like, wow. Oh, you know what? Sure. And they brought me to Joliet, Illinois, Scott Mansion.
Oh.
My very first ghost hunt. Hiram B. Scott was one of the original patent holders for several strands of barbed wire. So, really cool historically, like, really cool place. I saw my first shadow figure block out the light of a doorway, a hallway. My first cold spot. I was touched for the first time.
Oh,
the first, like, moving light that had no, like, car outside. It was just in the room. And numerous sounds that I couldn't explain. And I tried. So that was my very first ghost hunt experience. And then after that, I did urbex, where I just kind of went out on my own and found these ruins of old places and hunted for ghosts. And then in, I think it was maybe February of 2010, some dude on Facebook named Dan Norvell said he was going to do a cemetery crawl and to come and meet him out in the middle of nowhere. Well, the middle of nowhere was only 45 minutes from my house. So I'm just like, hey, I can go and do that. Sure. I had a great time. He was nothing like the other guys that I worked with. He was cool and not a jerk. And, we hung out a little bit after the ghost hunt. And then 14 years later, we're still investigating together until he retired in January.
Oh, nice.
So, a very condensed ghost hunting backstory.
That's got to
Well,
be
I
one of the
know-
more interesting ones. I'm sorry, Jesse. Go right ahead.
No, it's okay. Dan was part of the expedition entity, correct?
He was. He was the producer of the show, and then also the show's host and lead
Okay.
investigator.
Yeah, I watched
So,
a little bit of the episodes. So, I know. I think it was. Which one was it? You guys got the Telly Award for?
That was for our second trip to Broadhead Manor.
Okay.
We investigated primarily the second floor, but there were a couple spots on the first floor that we didn't get access to the first time we were there, like the janitor's quarters and the boiler room.
Mhm.
So we decided to add that into the episode as well. It was actually the first session we did, and then everything else was upstairs. And bit off a little bit more than we thought we would with that one. That was a little intense, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So, one other question I had about Expedition Entity. Do you have a favorite episode that you guys did? Like, favorite location?
Oof.
I know you have a lot.
The 17 episodes. If I had to say one, I won't say Broadhead because it's the easy answer. Yeah, I got the telly, and then this really great stuff happened, but that's the easy answer. I would say then the Roadhouse in Oregon, Illinois. The Roadhouse is an old speakeasy, and during Prohibition, it was one of the last stops for Al Capone before his distribution went off into Iowa. So you've got gang activity, a lot of murders, including like previous owners and that kind of stuff. And then in the 40s, a young man and a young woman were murdered, and the last place they were seen alive was the Roadhouse.
Wow.
And her spirit still haunts the building. So we go in and we investigate it, and it's Steve, Jen, Dan, and myself. And, you know, Dan and I have investigated the Roadhouse a million times. It's just like Broadhead and the Vets Hall. We go there all the time.
Mhm.
So, you know, we had an idea of what kind of activity we were going to get and where the hot spots were and everything. But we never brought a female investigator with us, really. You know, Jen was the first female investigator we had there. So we wanted her to try to, you know, communicate with Mary Jane, the spirit of the young girl.
Yeah.
So we're in the basement in what we think is the area she was killed, because it's an old butcher's room. So there's a blood drain in the floor. If you're going to kill somebody, that's the
Yeah.
spot.
Good room. Yeah.
That's a good space to do it.
Yeah.
So we do an Estes session where I'm asking the questions, and Jen is just in a chair, like further back away from the camera. And every time I try to ask about Mary Jane or anyone being killed in that room, she'd go, stop, stop.
Oh, wow.
And then like her voice would get like a tone, like stop. And I'm like, oh, geez, okay. So that continued throughout the night. And we end up getting upstairs to the bar area where we do another Estes, except this time Dan is listening, and he's like facing a wall. And then Jen is on the other side of the bar. And she's asking the questions, and she's taking playing cards, large-faced playing cards, and showing them to Steve's camera and saying, you know, what's the number on this card? And, you know, Dan actually said quite a few of the numbers on the cards. It was actually very interesting. But then we start asking more questions about, you know, what happened to Mary Jane, and all of a sudden she goes, done, stop, done. And it's just like, okay, we're not going to get any answers about what actually happened to you, are we? And you know, before we'd never really had any problems getting them to talk about it, but for some reason that night they didn't want to say anything at all. They just wanted to shut everything down.
Wow.
So, you know, you have, you know, an SB7 that for 10 minutes was spitting out a lot of numbers. And then all of a sudden, you know, at specific times where we're trying to ask these questions related to her murder, whoever was listening kept saying, don't, stop, done. But the rest of the time, you know, those words weren't coming up. So it's like, well, that's very coincidental and interesting. So it's a very interesting place. It has a lot of history, a lot of dark history, but you know, I highly recommend it. And they do
Yeah, I haven't been there yet. I want to go.
a dinner tour
Oh,
where
Yeah.
you go and do the presentation. He'll tell you all the history and all the research he's done on her murder, and then you go down into the basement and you kind of check it out.
Yeah, two of my friends did that, and they've been telling me to go do that. It's just like the dates that they're doing those doesn't correlate when I'm free. So
Sure.
I know what an Estes method is, but for everybody else that does not, could you explain that for us?
Sure. Estes is basically you're wearing headphones that are noise canceling, so you can't hear anything around you, right? And it's plugged into either an SB7 or some kind of spirit box device that has an out port. Or I've also used it with the Phasmabox app and a Necrophonic app, just to try to mix things up to see if it'd be different. And it still works, which is very interesting. And you also have your eyes covered. You could either use those like sleeping masks, which a lot of people use because they're $5 and super easy to get, or you could also try the Delco goggles, which Mike Del Coro made, and they're basically steampunk goggles, like costume goggles, and he put red lenses in them, and there's 3 speeds of red light, where it's just constantly on, a slow flash, and a fast flash.
Oh, wow.
And that helps you like get deeper into the trance for the Estes method, so you could hear the responses better. And you know, I've used them. It's weird and it's kind of disorienting to come out of it, but I feel like I definitely hear the responses better. But the cool thing is you know, when you're doing an Estes, you know, if you're under all the stuff, you can't hear the questions.
And then when it correlates, it's so awesome.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, I said a bunch of weird stuff. Was any of this correct? And then everyone else is like,
what's the best result? What's the best correlated response that you've ever either have been witness to or have done yourself?
Oh, geez. I can't even answer that. You know, it's almost like every time I try it, there's always 1 or 2 questions that are really, really, really good. You know, when Dan did it, and he was saying all these numbers because we were trying to get him to guess cards, and I don't remember what the cards were, but you know, there's 3 cards down, and they added up to 19, and then right as soon as the 3rd card went down, Dan went, "Stay." But like Steve put it together, but he couldn't say anything. He didn't have a microphone on, but he put it together that it was blackjack. Wait, what?
Oh, that's interesting.
And he had no idea. He had no idea what was going on. There was another time we were at the abandoned Boy Scout camp, which we kept the location a secret because we don't want a lot of people to go out there messing with it because it's not safe.
Was the camp
you know,
loud?
The buildings are in really. No.
Stop asking questions when they don't want that question asked.
Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, HR.
It's very unsafe, and someone could really get hurt because of the state of the building. But luckily, I'm an ex-EMT, and Dan is a retired firefighter paramedic, so we were well covered. So when we were the last session we did, I was in the Estes set up like 50 feet away because it was a very long building that we were in. So Dan is on way the other side of the room asking questions quietly, and I'm just listening to the Phasmabox, not the SB7, the Phasmabox. And one of the spirits like got toe to toe with Dan and was like in his face, and I was giving responses to Dan challenging this spirit.
Wow.
So that was actually
That's
very
awesome.
interesting.
Really
That's
quick
really
here,
cool.
Larry. We've got Mr. Ronald Lovett saying hello to you in the chat.
What's going on, Ron? Ron works a lot with Dale Kismerick
Oh, cool.
and his crew. So been a couple spots with Ron. They went to a couple spots for us when we did the Black Hawk War sites.
Cool.
A lot of really interesting things happen on those too.
Ooh.
Dale actually introduced Dan and I to the Phasma box, and the one time we were out there, you know, we'd used it all day at the Black Hawk sites and everything, and we ended up finishing the night at a cemetery near Dan's house. It's actually one of the episodes in, I think, season 1. It's Maple Cemetery. And we're set up in a spot where we normally get stuff right on the sidewalk. You know, we rarely have to go in. You can get everything you need right there at the sidewalk. And the Phasma box goes, investigation over. And then the whole laptop shut down.
Wow, what?
Oh my gosh.
That's
And we're all just standing there like, what the hell is that?
Did you
And they were done.
did you find out why it is there a log that you checked after it shut down? Was it a
Nope.
kernel panic?
Nope, the whole laptop died. It just shut off. So I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it was just weird timing
There are
or
no
the spirits.
coincidences.
The spirits are just like, hey, we're done. You guys need to go home now. Goodbye. And then
Right. Oh, that's
I
so
don't know,
funny.
but boy, was that weird. So yeah, I think Ronald might have been at that one.
He seems like
I
a
think
cool
cool.
guy. We should
Yeah.
have him on too. Just send him the link. Join us.
So, what do you feel actually makes Expedition Entity like different from other shows?
Well, there's a few things. First and foremost, we look for locations that are lesser known. So
Yeah, I've noticed that.
everyone can go to Waverly. We can all go to Eastern State or Pennhurst or whatever. There's a million stories about, what you caught there and night. We were there for the amount of time that you could rent the building. So, for example, in DeKalb, there's the Egyptian Theater. It's a really,
Yeah.
really neat theater. It's styled after an Egyptian motif because of the discovery of King Tut's tomb. Like, that was the original design. It's really cool. And they will rent the building out for 4 hours. And then you can add an additional hour or two if you need to. So we rented it for 4 hours. We added and paid extra for the hour before and the hour after. And, that's our equipment setup and our equipment teardown. So the 4 hours is still what happens, the entire investigation. That all happens in 4 hours.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then if you're watching an 8-minute session in the episode, that investigation lasted for 8 minutes. Nothing was cut out unless, I had to, like a camera issue or, someone, for some reason, something happened and we had to cut early. Otherwise, whatever we did for that amount of time, that's what you got to see. Even if nothing happened for 5 of those minutes, that's a part of ghost hunting. It doesn't always bam, 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 bam. But for some reason, we were fairly lucky. We chose methods that the spirit seemed able to communicate easily with. Dowsing rods and spirit boxes, K2s, all different EMF stuff. Things that we could then look back on and be like, okay, so the dowsing rod said this is the history. Oh, that's kind of cool. It correlates. But on top of everything being within that time frame, there's no sound effects. There's no, and then over the EVP microphone, we heard this, and then play it 6 times. I don't do that crap. Whatever happens to me on the investigation, that's what you get to hear. It's just you have the advantage of my captions, whereas I don't.
Yeah.
So, you'll be like watching me say something like, did that just say hello? And really it said go away, but I couldn't hear it. But you get the advantage because you get to read it. But otherwise, everything is just as it was for the investigation. And a lot of people seem to really like that.
Yeah, that is one thing I noticed when I was watching some of your stuff too. How it was like, I think the Starved Rock episode I was watching, where it was just, you guys were just sitting there for however long and nothing was really happening for a little bit. And then you started getting answers on the SB7. So I did notice that.
Yeah. So when we did the abandoned Boy Scout camp, we squeezed Dan and Jen into a washroom that's like the size of a closet. So they're both like squeezed in here like this, and Steve's in there with a camera squeezed in somehow. And for the 10 or 8 to 10 minutes that we filmed, nothing happened. Not a single thing. Just no responses, nothing. And I'm sitting there editing it, and I'm like, we have to include that, right? Because nothing happened, but something, something could have, it just didn't. But that's investigating. It's not always going to happen. So it gets put into.
A lot of people think they go into places and stuff's going to happen like all the time. It's like, no, not usually. There's times where like 5 things will happen at once and then nothing for 2 hours. Right. It just fluctuates. So.
And there's disadvantages of doing it that way, though. Because let's say, like, most of my episodes were about an hour long, and 15 minutes is the intro, the interview, and then whatever little B-roll I have until the investigation starts. That means I have 45 minutes to show investigation content. And if every session is 8 to 10 minutes, not every session is going to make it in. So out of the, the 10 that we might end up doing, I'll pick 4 or 5 that will make it in. And sometimes evidence gets left on the cutting room floor because I don't have enough time to put it in there. I could chop things up and then make a session 5 minutes and remove all the stuff in the middle that, nothing happened or the questions were dumb or something like that. But then you lose that pure investigation aspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That's true.
it's like,
So,
eh.
So, in the age that we have now, where there's a lot of like ghost hunting on YouTube and a lot of like urban exploration mixed in, which I have my own personal feelings about.
Okay,
Would you mind
I'd
just
love to hear
briefly
those
going
after
over,
this
and
question.
you did a little bit. Oh, it's fine. I can say it right now. I think finding a living person in an abandoned place is a lot scarier than a dead one.
I had it happen. I've had it happen. It is terrifying.
Oh
So
God.
that's my question
Terrifying.
is along the lines, and you discussed it a little bit with like the renting. Can you talk about like the prep that you have to do, like just like briefly, like how you like find the place, scope out the place in the way that making sure that you don't disturb somebody who's sleeping not eternally just for 8 hours. And like what that exchange looks like, the more like businessy aspect of it, 'cause I don't think we hear that too often.
Sure. Well, for us, because we're a production company filming a show, it's a little different. It's not like your normal investigation, because there's a lot of extra steps. So first, there's a lot of extra meetings that we have to have, because we have to talk about the fact that we're filming. So, and people have to know, hey, I need a contract that says you're allowing me to film here, and because you need to be in the interview, that I'm able to use your likeness on camera. And not everybody wants that. So then we have to try to find somebody, if they don't want to, one of their employees or something, that is comfortable talking about things on camera, and being able to record with us. So once we get past all of that, then it's finding dates. So let's say, if you wanted to go and rent the Egyptian Theater, it's a 4-hour time block for the investigation, right? Well, I still have daytime B-roll, the introduction, the interview, drone footage. I have to get all that during the day on top of the investigation. So for me, my day actually starts at 10 a.m. and I have to rent the building out for the entire day just to get all of that stuff started and in the can before we can even get to the investigation. And at that point, by the time, we usually had the cast show up at 7 p.m. And then we'd start at 8 p.m. By the time the cast got there at 7 p.m., I'd already been there for 9 hours. Doing the interviews, doing B-roll, doing drone footage, and all that stuff. That's not what you normally deal with when you're just doing the investigations, but it's that added extra administrative stuff that you have to do to make a show. And there's a lot of shows that don't do it in one day, simply for that reason. There were a couple episodes where we were very fortunate to break it up over 2 days. And let me tell you, that's fantastic. Because instead of having one 16 to 18-hour day, I have like a 10-hour day and an 8-hour day, or a 10 and a 6, and it's like, this is beautiful. So that makes it really tough. It makes it really tough. But, it's what you got to do if you want to make the show. And then, once you get everything done and everything's in the can, you're ready to go, there's still nighttime B-roll that has to be captured. There's if something happens and we have to pull somebody aside to do a little tiny quick interview just to get their experience written down or on camera, we have to make time for that too. So, it's all these extra steps that you have to be cognizant of the entire time. And that's kind of why when Dan and I did Expedition Entity, we split up our roles. We gave me the title of lead investigator just because, I was also the lead investigator too. But really, it's Dan. Anything that happens in front of the camera is Dan. Because I have 1,000,001 things to worry about behind the camera. And I have to constantly be thinking about that stuff at all times. I can't worry about, is this person asking the right questions for what we're looking for? If we're trying to correlate evidence to history, should we be asking questions about who the president is right now? No. Let's get into who the spirit is. I want to know who they are. I want to know more about them. I don't really care who the president is because half the time no one answers that question anyway. So let's get into the good stuff. That's Dan. That was his job, and he's very, very, very good at it. So that allowed me to think about things like, hey, this microphone doesn't really sound very good. When we cut to go into the next session, I need to make sure to check that microphone. If I have to worry about everything else, I might miss that. So
yeah, that's a good point.
There's a lot to keep track of when you're filming.
Yeah.
And that's what you went to school for.
I did, and I
for my own
taught
selfish
undergrad
reasons,
college
if
students
you're
about it,
comfortable-
and
I was saying, for my own selfish reasons, if you're comfortable, I would love to hear the story about how you accidentally stumbled upon a living person.
Yes.
okay. So this was long before Dan and I got together. There was a place not far from my house called the Toy Crib. It was this old. It's like Scooby-Doo toy factory. I'm not kidding. It's called the Toy Crib, and this old factory, and I'm just like, oh, this would be a great place to break into at night and do some investigating, do some urbex. So I go there at night, and it's the second floor, and like the basement's flooded, and all this dangerous things that I was totally not prepared for at like 22. And I go up onto the second floor, and I hear like stuff moving off on the edge of the floor, and I'm like, what the hell's that? Scared out of my mind. But I'm pressing on, and I go like, the large open rooms are like the pillars in the middle of them, right? So I'm walking down the middle of this room, and I see a shadow move to the left hand side. I'm like, I got a shadow. I'm gonna walk over there. I'm gonna try to make contact with it. And I turn the corner, and in between these two long hallways with like the pillars going down it, there's like offices in the middle of them. And I turn the corner, and there's a door to the left, and there's a door to the right to the left. And in the doorway of the right-hand side, there's a homeless person standing there staring at me. And I shrieked like a little girl and booked it. Just booked it out of there.
Oh my god.
I didn't know if it was a real person. I didn't know if I saw the ghost of a homeless person. I went back during the day, a couple days later, and like there's a room in there, a bed, a mattress, bottles, and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, someone was living in there. But here's me at like, early 20s stumbling in there like an idiot, making all this noise, waving my flashlight around, not even thinking that there's going to be a person in there. And lo and behold, yeah, he's just like staring at me. Lost it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Sadly, the building was
You
tore
were in
down a
his
couple years
bedroom.
later. So, yeah. At that point, that was probably his living room. But yeah. So.
Oh, that's too funny.
Kind of along that same line, but have you ever been in a situation where you felt like maybe you were in danger, but not from like a living person?
Oh, a few times. So there was a spot out in the middle of nowhere. We call it the Creepy Church, and it's a rural church community. Like it's an active community. We used to go and investigate the graveyard next door, and we'd always be at the fence. We'd only ever go in if either the cemetery board or the police department said, yeah, you can go in, it's fine. So, always at the fence. There was one time, like the first time we went there, and we should have learned, we did not learn. The first time, Dan had his arms over the chain link fence like this, and he's just kind of asking questions out into the darkness. And he was to my right, and then our friend Marcia was to my left, and I got the camera. I turned to look at Marcia, right, because she was doing something. I don't remember what she was doing. I don't remember. Some device she was using, she was trying to get to go off. And all of a sudden, you hear the chain link just, like, rattle. And I look back, and Dan is, like, waist over the chain link fence. Like, his little feet are kicking in the air like this. Go back, focus. I leaned forward.
Oh my god.
His feet are kicking in the air. The only reason he didn't go into the graveyard is because his legs got caught on the top of the chain link. And, he
Oh my
stumbles
gosh.
back, and on his forearms there's bruises. Like someone grabbed his arms and yanked him inside the graveyard.
Oh my god.
So
Did
we book it. we get out of there quick. And we're talking about it, and he's like, it literally felt like someone grabbed me by my arms and tried to pull me inside.
Wow.
Okay, well, let's make a note not to go back there. So 4 months later, we go back, and we pull up to the cemetery or the graveyard, and we're just doing photos, just snapping photos, and I'm taking photos of like the church because there's windows, and you know how windows are. You get stuff in windows all the time, snapping my pictures. And meanwhile, Dan's like not feeling well. Like he's feeling sick. The closer we got to the cemetery, the worse he got. So I'm just like, okay, well, you stay in the car. I'll go and handle this. All right. So me, Marsha again, and I think Matt's nephew was with us. I'm snapping photos, and I happen to look at the photo of the window that I took, and there's two people standing in the window. Oh my God, we're busted. We gotta go. We book it back to the car, and and Dan's telling us like, yeah, the closer you guys got to the church, I felt worse and worse and worse. But now that we're getting away from everything, I'm feeling better now. Like, oh, cool. So we end up talking about it, and the next day he tells me like, man, I still feel like crap. Well, why don't you go in and get seen or something? And then all of a sudden stuff starts moving in his house. And
no.
And a shadow appears in his daughter's doorway.
Oh.
And I remember this one time, he's at an old metal swing set, from like the 80s in his backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And his kids are playing over in the grass, and he said one of the swings was swinging by itself and then came to a dead stop in the center.
Oh,
And
man.
a friend of ours was a psychic, and she goes, something in that church attached to Dan and has now moved on to attach to his daughter because his daughter is sensitive. And you guys got to get rid of that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like 2 years into the paranormal at this point. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm still trying to figure this crap out. So she goes and she contacts a friend of hers who's really into astral projecting. And at this point, I'm like, what? This is fake. I don't believe in this. Astral projecting. Okay. We're just going to talk to this lady and we're going to have to do all the work. Got it. So Dan looks up, the Catholic cleansing rites and all that stuff because he's Catholic. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to put a little crystal here. I'm going to sprinkle some salt there. That'll work, right? And we get everybody out of the house. It's just him and I. And this lady's on Skype, which was the big communication tool back then, right? So she's like, okay, I'm just going to lay here. I'm going to talk with you guys. You just walk around with the phone, and I'll tell you what I'm doing. Okay. Yeah, sure. Not only does she describe Dan's house, every room that she's in, she's describing the activity that we're watching. So, the kitchen's in the center of his house, the living room's on one side, and then there's like a porch room on the other side of the kitchen. We start in the kitchen, and she's chasing this thing around the house, going into all these different rooms. So she goes, okay, I'm chasing it into the living room right now. And then like stuff is moving in the living room. And she pushes it against the window, apparently, because the blinds smush against the window. And then it
cool.
apparently takes off, and then the window next to it, that little swizzle stick that turns the blinds open and closed, starts swaying like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what kind of demonic crap am I witnessing right now? Totally like blown out of my mind what I'm seeing. So she gets it down into the basement, and Dan and I are cleansing. He's throwing holy water, and I'm sprinkling salt all over the place, just doing whatever we can do to cleanse each of these rooms going down into the basement. We cleanse the basement and then push it out the exterior door. And we're standing down there, and at this point, she's like, okay, guys, I think you got it. I'm going to go ahead and rest now. She hangs up the phone. And Dan goes, can you give us a sign that it left? And I kid you not, we're both in the basement, and we felt the house jump a foot to where, like, our knees buckled a little bit. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And he goes, I think it left. The house jumped.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah.
And
stuff like
that's
that
the
happens.
first time I've ever experienced a building move underneath my feet. Maybe it didn't move. Maybe that it just made me feel like it moved. But that was a whole experience of multiple locations where it's like, I don't know if I
Yeah.
can trust what I know about the paranormal anymore, because I have no explanation
Wow.
for everything that I saw tonight.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, speaking of psychics, I know you did something with Chris Fleming. What did you do?
Yeah. So we did the Woodstock Opera House. It's still in the process. It's one of the things I'm trying to put together. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to use it yet. We did a few investigations, and it's got some really neat history. The Opera House does. There's a phantom spirit
yeah, it does.
that like a resident spirit there. Her name's Elvira, and she has a specific seat that she likes to sit in. So we went and sat in her seat and did some stuff on the stage, and the basement has an old like jail. There used to be a jail down there. So we kind of poked around in the basement a little bit, and we actually got a lot of activity and had a lot of things happen while we were there. And I've never really worked with Chris very much. I'd attended investigations, or I did a filming for him at Conover Square one time. Steve and Josiah used it as like a representation for working with Chris. And some crazy wild things happened. So I went to his conference last year, and he's like, "Hey, we should do an investigation together." And I'm like, "Can I film it?" And he agreed, and even signed the likeness release. So I was very excited. And I'm following him around the Woodstock Opera House, and like all this crazy stuff's happening. He's getting these like wildly clear EVPs on I don't remember, it's the old EVP recorder that all the bigger names use.
Yeah, the Panasonic, I think 60 or something.
Something like that. And just he's like, it'll pick up, and then we'll listen to it right away. I'm like, cool. I love that stuff. And he was getting these really clear answers out of nothing. I'm like, I was in the room. I didn't hear that, but this thing heard it. And then, he would be like, hey, let's sit down for a minute. You check batteries and do all that stuff. I'm going to look at some EVPs that we caught. And he put them on his computer, and we were looking at them, and I'm just like, dang, I can't believe we caught that. Things that were, tied directly to what we were asking, and history of the building, and he definitely knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah,
that is for sure. He's
I
a
love investigating
very
with him.
good investigator. So I was very fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah, I can't. Well, if I ever get to see it, I can't wait to see it, because he's a lot of fun to investigate with. When last year at the at his conference, we were upstairs in the balcony area, and I know how to sing opera, so I sang Phantom of the Opera, and I messed up on purpose to see if we got like responses. And yeah, it was so funny. Like, I messed up on purpose, and then somebody was like, did you enjoy that? And then it clearly said no. And then, how did you feel about that? It was bad. It was so funny. So I know Alex was
but that makes like great evidence, because you were clearly wrong.
Exactly. Yep. Oh, it was a lot of fun. So one other question I have for you. I know you're writing a book right now. Because I know you're an author. I haven't had the pleasure of reading your books just yet. So would you mind telling us about your books and the one that you're writing right now?
Sure. There is a book that's out there that we don't talk about anymore. I'm not going to say the name of it. It's a book that we wrote on paranormal theories that we had in 2012. It is self-published.
Oh, wow.
The grammar's horrible. It's not good. But a lot of the theories in there are actually things that like people have gone and proved later on down the road. So it's like, hey, I wrote a book about that in 2012. But we don't talk about it. So, not counting that one, our first book together was Ghost of the Black Hawk War of 1832. It's called Ghost of the Black Hawk War. And we went to all the Illinois battle sites, the massacre sites, the major events of the war, and we investigated them. A lot of these are just, on the side of the road monuments that people have just forgotten about. Well, come to find out, almost 200 years later, people want to hear about that stuff, and the spirits have a lot to say. So, one of the sites we went to, it's just outside of DeKalb. It's in a town called Stillman Valley. It's named after the man that led the militia troops in the Battle of Stillman's Run, because they were basically defeated by Blackhawk, and they retreated like a coward. Stillman was a coward. So, we're investigating this site, and there's 12 headstones, 9 burials. So 3 of the men are just out in the middle of nowhere. And it's not a cemetery, though. It's a park. And this park has no dusk hours. It's just open.
Nice.
So we're there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the police don't care. They don't care at all. At this point, they know us, but, it's like you could be there at all hours of the day or night. Doesn't matter. So one of the times we went there, Dan got a full spectrum photo of a floating head. And
cool.
That's what kind of started us in this history of the Black Hawk War, because it's like, why is there a floating head in the middle of this grassy area? Whose head is it, and why is his head here? So that kind of got us started on doing all the research, and now we're doing the Wisconsin battles. We did the Battle of Bad X, which is just south of, I think, La Crosse, Illinois, Wisconsin.
Okay.
That's about 4 hours away in like the middle of Wisconsin, over by the Mississippi. And we brought Dan and myself, Paige, who was acting as historian, and then Diet was our medium. And, we kind of kidnapped her. It's kind of weird to say, but we kidnapped her. She had no idea where we were going. She just knew that we were picking her up and that we were going to take her home. About 5 minutes away from the site, she started feeling like there's a bunch of gravel in her throat, that she was drowning, that she was, just getting impaled, and there was a mass amount of death. Women, children, everything. Well, in that area, which is, about the size of a football field, between 450 and 500 Native Americans were gunned down by a gunboat. On the shore, in the Mississippi River, on the islands, in the middle of the river, they were just mowed down mercilessly. And she hit on everything. So, that was a huge investigation for us, because, before, most of the sites are like 5 people here, 10 people there. This was like 450, and the medium that I very, 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 very much trust was getting overwhelmed by how much death had happened in this site. And we're doing all sorts of things. We pull out the Necrophonic, because it's a simple app, and we just see what happens, see what coincidences we get. And I have a video clip of it somewhere. And Diet goes, "I'm getting somebody's father. Like, who's the father?" And then while she's kind of asking this very confused question, the Necrophonic goes, "Paesa." And I don't know what Paesa means.
Wow.
I don't speak Sauk, so I had to look up Paesa. Come to find out, Paesa is the name of Blackhawk's father.
Oh, wow.
So either his father showed up while we were there or something, and that was very interesting. So the research on that book is still ongoing. It takes a while, because these are all outdoor sites, and you really can't go in the summer because of ticks and overgrowth, and you can't go in the winter because you'll never find it. So your sweet spot is in the spring if it's not too swampy, or in the fall if it's not too swampy.
Gotcha. Like right when the insects will cooperate.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the first book, and then the eventual addition to it. The second book is the Afterlife Anthologies. It's a collection of short stories where the majority of the stories are based on things that Dan and I have done in investigations or experiences in our lives and stuff like that, but they're told from the ghost perspective. So, the main character might die, and he's telling things as a ghost now. Or, the main character might not realize he's a ghost, and he's trying to figure out, like, why people keep moving into his house and why are they ignoring him. There's a lot of, heaven and hell motifs. There's a gangster story. There's some really, really traumatic elements to some stories, and there's some happier stories. So everyone's always like, "Oh, I loved this story. This was my favorite story." Like the last story in the book. Whenever I read it, I get like a Sin City noir vibe. It's very like detective-esque, and that's my favorite story. But someone else would be like, "Oh, I love this story because it reminded me of this." So, that was a lot of fun. I did the editing on that one. That was quite the chore because it's like 200 something pages. And then
Yeah.
my next book is going to be, I can't say too much about it yet. It's going to be a guidebook based on everything that I've learned in the paranormal.
Cool.
And that's going to be like a lot of things that might be a little too much for like an entry level investigator, but it's things that you might look back on in 6 months and be like, oh, I'm ready for this information now. Here it is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, like for example,
Okay.
when I did my talk at the Chicago Paranormal Conference, it was about AI and the paranormal, and how AI is really dangerous for the paranormal, just because how easily people are going to be able to fake content and use that content to grow themselves and brand themselves, and push people out of the paranormal publicly that are more into the research. You're already seeing that with YouTubers now, where they're going to conferences as headliners because they have a huge following. Whereas, they're speaking about some investigation they did, and you could totally tell it was fake on YouTube. But then someone who wants to talk about a research study can't get in because their followers are like 3,000 compared to 3 million.
Yeah.
So there's a section in the book that talks about AI and how, these are things that you have to be aware of, and here's some ways that you can tell if something's AI or not. And,
Interesting.
that's one chapter. And then there's another chapter where I took our actual investigation reports and put them in the book. So you can see
Cool.
how we wrote our reports about what we experienced and how things kind of happened during the investigation. And I pitched the book to Llewellyn, and they said that they have somebody working on a similar book, but they want me to write a different book that takes elements from chapters that I submitted. They're like, we want more of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, okay.
Oh, that's great.
I guess I'll work on that book next. After I finish this 50,000 word book, I'm going to work on that book. So,
That's so strange. That's such a strange feeling.
yeah. So I'm hoping to get it done by the end of summer. So maybe come September, October, once the bigger events start happening, I'll have it ready to go. I'd love to have it at Chris's convention.
Yeah.
I definitely
Well, when
won't for Gettysburg, but it's all right.
Well, I also think that when you do have it ready to go, when you're ready to market it, come see us again. We'll have you on just to promote it, and we'll give away a copy. We love doing that.
Yeah,
Sweet.
we do that. We'll give away like books and stuff. Yeah.
And
We
absolutely.
definitely do. We gave away Dave Schrader's book. We gave away a
Chad
couple
Lewis
of Chad Lewis's book.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
Yeah, that'd be
given away
great.
a few.
If I can get it done by Michigan, I'd be pretty happy, because I feel like I could do
Right.
okay at Michigan. There's enough people there that are still entry level that they like the TV people because they're fans of the shows and stuff, and they want to get into it. They just don't know how. I feel like if I can get enough copies in hand by the end of August, I could make it work. But I need to finish it.
Right.
I'm like 8,000 words short of my goal of 50,000 words. So like I'll sit down, I'll be like,
Michigan.
okay, today's goal is 1,000 words, and I'll get to 250, and I'm just like, my brain is melting out of my ear.
Yeah, and you can't rush creativity either, because if you rush creativity, the quality will go down. So you have to take a break
Yeah.
at that point.
Well, and where I'm at now is I worked on the structure first. So like all the chapters are set up, all the sub chapters are set up, and now I'm just going back and adding material to spots that seem a little thin, like they need to be a little bit more in depth or more detail or something like that. So the first 40,000 words weren't that bad because I was doing all the structure, and now I'm going back and adding a little bit more detail, and I'm like, okay, this section's fine. Scroll. I'm gonna add about 50 words here, and then you get to like chapter 5, and you've only added 250 words, and you're like, yeah, okay, I need to go back because I'm never gonna get 8,000 words if I'm halfway through the book and I've only added 250. So
Yeah, definitely.
It's-
Well, we wish you the
it's a
best of luck,
thing.
and
thank you.
yeah,
That's
well,
so funny.
it's part of your craft, and I'm sure you'll get there. And I'm definitely excited to check it out once you release it. We
Yeah.
are though approaching the top of the hour. We're a little bit past, but that's okay because we started a little bit past. But
Yeah.
one thing that I do want to touch on before we close things up here and we do our final thoughts is outside of those books that we were talking about, where can people find you? Where can people consume your content? Where can people, when they look for you, where should they go?
The best place to find me is Facebook. Um, I have an Instagram, but it basically serves to repost my Facebook content. I had a Twitter, I had a TikTok, I had a Patreon. It's too much to manage all that by myself,
Yeah.
and I really don't enjoy it. So I do everything on Facebook now, and it works. I met Jesse on Facebook and stuff, so it's working. You
Me
can
too.
find I have a link tree, so that has all my links in it. That's on my Facebook, and that'll take you to like the PARAFLIX channel where Expedition Entity is. You can watch that. It'll show you the trailers. It'll show you other things that I've worked on. It'll take you to my website, smalltownproductions.com, where you can see things outside of the show that I work on. Like there's a documentary on there, Haunted or Not, that I'm currently editing. There's a little bit of information on there. There's the narrative film that I directed, 3B. That's got some stuff on there. And then my media kit, where you can read all about me and see all the stuff that I've done. But yeah, like Facebook's really, really it for me. Maybe it's my age. I just don't want to.
Yeah, I mean,
do the
we're
rest.
in a similar place. No, it's. I don't think it's your age. Sometimes platforms have like a peak of popularity and then they kind of die down a little bit. We had a strong presence on Twitter like 2 years ago, and I feel like we had a lot of growth due to it, and Twitch as well. And since we've kind of pivoted away just for the sake of growth, and I feel like we were stronger on those particular platforms when a lot of people left Twitter, right? Or X, as it's now known as.
X.
And we've decided to do more of a video content instead of just purely audio. So we pride ourselves on like a YouTube instead of Twitter or whatever. So it's no big deal. I feel like the majority of people, Facebook works in tandem with Instagram. So if you're not doing Instagram, I don't really feel like you're missing out on anything at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll pop on there and I'll see people sharing the same stuff they shared on Facebook, and it's just like, oh, you're my friend. I like that.
I will also say though, I do relate to the sentiment of like feeling a bit old. Like I, especially myself, don't want to do TikTok. So we have Joan running our TikTok just because I don't know what I'm doing with it, and I don't want to.
I had one going and I was doing short form content and it wasn't really going anywhere, but that's okay. And then I guess I didn't log into it in enough time, and then it like dropped off of my login options, and now I can't remember how to log into it. So I'm like, well, I guess that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, yeah.
Oops.
Just let it go.
Yikes.
I know.
I understand it, but
Right. You and I are going to be doing a lot of stuff actually coming up. So, what events are you going to be at coming up?
Oh my
next few
goodness.
months?
So I actually just
I know, that's how I
signed a
feel
new
too.
event. So I'm excited about that. So July 20th, I'll be at Broadhead Manor for the investigation.
Yep.
They're doing an expo there with Sam Beltrusis.
I can't
My son
wait.
has a travel baseball game that weekend, so I'm like, I can't do the expo, but I could do the investigation, and they jumped on that. Though I think the weekend after that is the Battlefield Bash in Gettysburg. I'll be there for that weekend doing my workshop, producing a paranormal documentary at my vendor booth as breakout sessions. So I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be my first time doing the workshop as a vendor, not as a speaker.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that goes. But the next event after that is actually Paranormal Rockdown at Edinburgh Manor on August 9th. And August 9th is my birthday. So
happy birthday.
I'm investigating a location I've never been to before on my birthday. That's going to be
cool.
great.
That's gonna be great.
I was supposed to be at that, but yeah. Hold on.
Were you?
Why not?
Yeah.
Chris Hartle's running it, and he's like,
Yeah. Well, he contacted my band about it. Like, we were gonna jam there, and then that was when I was supposed to facilitate a CE5. So I was like, that's the one day that I have something going on, and now I'm not in the band anymore, and now the CE5 thing got canceled. So I'm like,
Well,
you might still be able to vend it.
Yeah. I'll think about
But
it.
I was talking with Chris, and I'm like, yeah, I've never done the building before, and he goes, oh, then you got to go down to the basement by yourself. I'm like, sure, okay,
Oh
whatever
God,
that
right?
means. And then I told him, oh yeah, it's also my birthday, and he goes, well, you're definitely going down to the basement now. Sweet.
The Michigan Paranormal Conference too, right?
Michigan Paracon. I have an extra large booth. I'm doing the same thing there with my workshop, doing breakout sessions. So we're gonna see how it goes. Whatever I learned from the Battlefield Bash, I hope to implement there. My new event that I just got picked up for is the Illinois Paranormal Conference in Rockford, Illinois. My friend Kathy Kressel from Haunted Rockford puts it on with Tinker Swiss Cottage, which is a location of ours in the episodes. And so as the Vets Hall, where it's hosted, that was another location of ours. So
Okay.
I'm excited to go back there. And then after that, there's Chris Fleming's Paracon in October. I'm doing a workshop and a panel there. I have a community event the weekend after that for a memorial library. It's a haunted mystery tour. Looking forward to that one. That's going to be really fun. And then the last weekend of October is Seance at the Roth House. This one's put on by Graveside Paranormal.
Yes.
And have you ever heard of the Roth House?
I have
Well,
not.
you know I have.
Okay. I know you have. So the Roth House is the first documented possession in the country. And they did like a little seance in the dining room there. So Neil, who runs Graveside Paranormal, is going to do like a 200-person seance, funneling all this energy into the medium Diet in the center of it. And we're going to investigate the house during the day, and then at night after the seance to see what effects all that extra energy is going to have on the investigation. And if that wasn't cool enough, we're also going to film a documentary about the seance at the same time. So I get to speak during the day.
So I'm
and
gonna
then
be there.
film a documentary. So
awesome.
that one's going to be really, really cool. And then as of right now, my
excited
last
for
event
that.
for the year is the Bell City Paracon in November. I don't have too much information about that one yet. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm excited. I love doing events. I love going out and meeting people and doing little talks and stuff. So I have 10 plus a couple extras that aren't on my schedule because they're private events, but I have 10 public conferences so far. I'm so excited to do them.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Busy.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight because you are on such a busy schedule. So we really, really appreciate it.
Sure.
We love to wrap up our shows with doing a final thought so we can go all around and say our final ones. Larry, would you like to start us off on our final thought, or would you like someone else to go? You can pick whichever one.
I'll let one of you guys go, and I'll see kind of the theme of the final thoughts.
Cool. Got it. My final thought is the thought I also went in, which is alive people are scarier than dead people. That's still my fear. I always joke that I'd rather my house be haunted than have a Frogger. So that's my fear.
Yeah.
My
funny.
final thought was going to be very similar. If I had to pick between a live person, a mean live person, or a mean ghost, I'd probably pick the ghost.
What you got, Jesse?
Well, I mean, I did the interview, so I don't know. My final thought is I think Larry's cool, and I'm excited for all the stuff we're going to be doing together.
How many of my events are you going to?
Oh, gosh, I got the July one, and then definitely the Chris Fleming one, Michigan Paranormal Conference, and then the October 26th one.
Okay, so 4. Okay.
So a few. And I just saw you on Saturday.
A lot of chances for a lot of selfies.
Jesse, keep us informed. I might tag along on one of those. We'll see.
Okay.
Since I'm in the area. Larry, give us yours next, because I'm always the last one to go.
Sure. So I made this like quote of the day graphic video thing, just because I get monetized for my content on Facebook, so I got to keep posting content on Facebook. And I'm like, I want to make a little motivational quote that I like, and it goes like this: you don't have to be perfect. Just be perfectly you.
Yep.
That's nice. I like that. I like that a
That's
lot.
that's my.
Yeah, Frank, now say something nice back.
I think Larry is perfect. So I'll say that. I'm very excited to see, where Larry's going to be the next, 3 years, and then 5 years, and then 10 years. And I hope that we don't lose touch, and I hope that we have him on, reoccurring be great. And, we could watch each other's growth. And I'm really excited to, for his book and his works, and, just mirroring what everyone else said. Thank you for coming on. We're all very busy. And we definitely want to have you on at any time that you'd like to be on. We're very welcoming. We've got a nice little community going. So with that said, for all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for telling a friend. Thank you for telling your mom to listen to us. We'll see you all next week. And until then, we hope you have a fabulous week and a great upcoming weekend. Stay safe, and you stay spooky as well. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
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 We circle